Good afternoon. I'm Annette Manji, the Executive Director of the Retail Dietitians Business Alliance. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today's billed as a webinar, but it's really a cook-along, and we're talking today about the ultimate demo duo, how RDN-Chef partnerships, RDN-Chef partnerships on cost-effective cuisine. I think you're really going to enjoy this event today. Just a couple of housekeeping things in advance of kicking us off. This webinar / cook-along has been approved for 1 continuing education credit, and everybody who attends today will be sent their certificate of attendance within the next 24 hours. And as we go through the cook-along, please do share any questions you have or any comments you have directly in the chat, and we'll be sure that we get to those. We've left plenty of time at the end. I want to thank the Michigan Bean Commission, Shari, Michigan Bean Commission.
Yes, Michigan Bean Commission.
For joining us today and for sponsoring this session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shari Steinbach, a registered dietitian and retail dietitian background who needs no introduction. And her partner today is Chef Paul. Shari, take it away.
Thank you, Annette. I'm really excited to be here today with my friend, Chef Paul Penney. Paul and I have worked together for many, many years. Many years. We met when I was in retail, starting at Meyer. Yep. And we've done, Paul? Cooking shows together and women's expos together.
Store openings.
TV, demos in the store, all sorts of stuff. And, doing a demo with a chef has really been very beneficial to me. I've learned a lot, but our customers have learned a lot as well. Chef Paul, I think you taught me how to cut a mango.
Yes.
As you were laughing at me, and I was struggling when we were doing smoothies one time, promoting fruits and vegetables. Taught me a better way to cut a pepper and an onion and even more. So I personally like working with somebody who's called a personal chef.
Yes.
And I'll tell you a little bit why. You may know about what I call white tablecloth chefs. We've all worked with chefs probably as retail dietitians. Some of them, all of them, cook very, very good food, but sometimes it's not what I call consumer friendly. Right. A consumer may say, wow, this is great that the chef made this, but it's not anything I'm going to duplicate at home.
Right.
And really, as retail dietitians, we want people to come into our stores to learn better cooking and really cook healthy food that's easy, affordable, and pretty simple for the most part.
Yep.
And so that's why I choose to work with Paul. I wanted him to give you a little bit of background, though, on being a personal chef and how he's changed his focus over the years to really help consumers do just that, put the right foods in their basket and cook at home.
And I'll echo what you're saying about being in front of the customer and the consumer. The thing that you want to be very mindful of is that you quite often have a small window of opportunity. And so you don't want to be doing various tasks or things that are boring and mundane.
Right.
The customer wants to be, I call it edutainment. Yeah, they want to be educated and have some form of entertainment, as well as a sampling of something at the end.
That's right. And we call it educational selling, right? We're trying to sell more food in an educational manner.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as a personal chef, most of my business was working for either a family or a single person or whatever, and doing meals for meal replacement, whatever. And over the years, it developed more into helping people. Yes, feeding people help, but it was more about the education part that I found more appealing to me. So I went to a part where I was doing more in-store demos for various clients and bits and pieces, as well as doing more with working with folks that maybe need a little extra help in cooking, making use of food packages in food distribution areas and things like that. And that's where I found my niche is doing a lot more. How can people get the most out of their bang for their buck, most out of their cooking budget? And this today is just going to fit in perfectly with that.
And like I do, when people understand the basics of cooking, when they can eat at home, the chances are they are going to eat healthier. They're going to save money, and they're going to save time. And that's really why we chose these recipes today. We've got a soup and a chili recipe, which we're going to do for you. And when Paul and I were looking at these recipes, One thing Paul said that hit him is like, these are kind of similar, but yet a little bit different.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't we do these side by side so we can show the versatility of the ingredients that we have? We know if you're cooking along with us, you'll probably have chosen one of the recipes to make, which is perfectly fine. But we wanted to show both of them because I think it's a great idea to do so. And we've got these fabulous low-cost ingredients that we're going to talk about as we go along. Very nutritious, very nutrient-rich ingredients that we're going to put in here. So why don't we get started? We've got a Michigan 3-bean soup that we're going to do, and we've got a Michigan bean and squash chili that we're going to do.
Correct.
So I'll be your sous chef over on this side and help out.
And I'm glad I would anyway. The other thing that we wanted to mention is that these are just basic recipes. You can keep them plant-based. You can add extra protein. Today we're adding turkey. I follow a plant-based diet, so I could add any sort of plant-based protein to this recipe as well. And remember, that the whole idea is to keep it simple, get good ingredients to start with, and make it fun for the presentation.
And mise en place, I must say, Chef Paul, when you're doing a demo, as all of you retail dietitians know who've done them before, the mise en place is one thing you always tell me. Everything in its place before we start, whether it's a TV demo, whether it's in a store, whether it's on a video, everything ready to go means we're going to have it measured properly, cut properly, and it just makes life so much simpler.
And that there's no surprises where you get partway into it and you go, oh, I've forgotten X, Y, Z.
Right. So let's get started.
So we've got our pans are nice and hot, and we've got oil in them. We just use some olive oil. Again, if you've got vegetable or canola or coconut, whatever sort of oil, cooking oil that you're going to use, go with that, okay? But you need to always add oil to a hot pan, not to a cold pan. So our pans are hot, and we're going to start. Shari, why don't you start with the onion?
Okay.
And in my recipe, I've got the mirepoix, celery, onion, and carrot. And Shari,
I've got about a half a cup of onion here, right?
Yep.
Diced onion here.
So again, these are the hard vegetables, and we want to make sure that hard vegetables go in first. And we're just going to saute those and just get them moving in the bottom of the pan, getting them coated. Okay?
Okay.
And now, once we've got that, and, we would cook this down for a couple of minutes or whatever. The other trick that I've found is if I have a time constraint, I will take frozen mirepoix that has been blanched, or I will pre-cook some of the mirepoix ahead of time and then put it in the pan, and then we're not waiting 3 to 5 minutes just for the mirepoix to come to cooked stage.
And a lot of stores, you mentioned even that you've seen this prepared in the stores. Maybe some of your stores sell this with the celery and the onions and the carrots already pre-cut that people can utilize.
Yeah. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to add some, how's that onion looking? Good?
It's looking good.
Right.
It's cooking.
So I have one more ingredient here, which is potatoes. The thing that you want to also try to make sure that you do is to keep your vegetable pieces about the same size. So we said in the recipe, 1-inch potatoes. Try to keep it to that. If they're too big or too small, they're either going to go to mush or they're going to not cook at all. So keeping onion and carrot and celery all the same sort of size and the potatoes the same really works.
Paul, as you're putting those potatoes into it, it gets me thinking about, and part of the job here is just kind of to give you, bits and pieces, as you like to say, of educational talking points to share with your consumers. And of course, all of us are dealing with consumers now who are looking at the prices rising with food. They're very concerned about costs. The other thing I like about these recipes we're creating, we use just some mini red potatoes in there. You could have a distressed potato. We talk about reducing food waste in there that you might throw in, like, hey, that would be perfect for this soup. Or
carrots that are wilted.
Right.
Yeah. Or celery. Once you start adding liquid or things to it, they come back. Right now, obviously, if there's really bad blemishes or things like that, you want to cut those out. But again, you can do that very easily with distressed vegetable.
Yes.
One thing I did forget really quickly is about the gloves.
Yes, thank you.
So food safety is important to me as a chef. It doesn't look good on your resume to have that you poison 3 people in a store. It doesn't go down very well. So I always go to a store and get, these are gloves. You may not be able to do latex, but if you can get vinyl gloves, that's great. And what I like to do is I will put one glove on first and then the second glove on top of that. If I am doing something that is I'm worried about cross-contamination, then I'll put a third glove. And depending on how long or what the demonstration situation is, I'll do one other glove on this hand as well. And that way I can change to clean surfaces 4 times during the demonstration.
I really like that, because how many times you put gloves on and then you touch something, you go, oh shoot, I have to change my gloves.
And
then
with sweaty hands, you can't.
It's hard to put on. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that tip.
So the cost of gloves is nothing really, but it's a public perception that you are going over and above to keep them safe. And so I really emphasize that a lot.
And just so, I'm not putting them on because you're going to be doing some chopping in a minute and demonstrating. So otherwise I would probably have that on. Chef,
no, your onions are looking good. Okay, so what we're going to do here, for you, you're going to put in some tomatoes.
Okay, and I've got 2 cans of no added salt diced tomatoes here.
Yep. And Shari's doing the chili and I'm doing the soup. Yeah. So before I put in my tomatoes, I want to add some spice or some herb here. And this is oregano. Now, you can put in fresh oregano, and if you were doing that, you would do that at the end of the cook cycle. But if you're doing dried, you want to get the most out of it, so you put that in early. Here's the other way that you should be aware of, is that the more surface area of the leaf that you have, the more flavor you're going to get through. So just pour, this was about a tablespoon of oregano, and you put that in the palm of your hand, and you take the other hand, and you just work it around to break down the little leaves, right? And that will give you more surface area of dried oregano to add to your dish, okay?
Smells great.
Yeah, already, yeah. And if it was things like peppercorns, you might heat those up, right? Shari, you've got some chili and some cumin.
Yes, I've
You can add
got a
those?
tablespoon of chili powder and a couple teaspoons, I think, of cumin in here, or a teaspoon of cumin. But as you mentioned too, Paul, with this recipe, like others, people's taste different. You might want it a little bit hotter.
Yep.
There's different types of chili powders that you can explain to people and experiment with. If you're doing this, you might pull some of your different chili powders that you sell at your store and show them and talk about the different flavor profiles.
And the thing to remember always in a demonstration scenario is you don't know the tolerance level of the person that's going to come and maybe sample this. So you always go to the lower end and just reinforce that you can always add additional spice or whatever to it as you go along. Okay, because I've had situations where, to my taste, it tasted great, but someone came along and said it was way too spicy.
Yep.
So again, that's a turn off that you want to avoid wherever possible. So we're going to add some garlic. Now, you'll notice that we're putting the garlic in after we've done a little bit more of the process. If you put the garlic in too early, it will burn. It will burn really quickly.
I've had that happen before.
And it's very bitter.
Yes.
So in my case, I've got 2 teaspoons, I think, of garlic. You can't ever have not enough garlic. Yeah. And Shari, I think you have 1 or 2.
And we chose to get the minced garlic. Obviously, again, it's pre-minced. It's a little bit more expensive. A lot of people don't mind, chopping up their own garlic. This is about 1 teaspoon of the mince that you can get in the produce department equals about 1 clove of garlic, correct?
Yeah. And there's another cool product that has it in a tube.
Oh, yes.
And it's from Australia. Personal preference. I'm going to add the tomato to my dish. Shari, why don't you add the sauce to yours?
Okay, so you've got 1 can of diced tomatoes going into the 3-bean soup, and I've got just 1 can of, again, no salt added tomato sauce.
I love using silicone spatulas. I try not to use wood spatulas just because people are a little uncertain sometimes about wooden spatulas. Silicon spatulas work fine every time, and they're great, easy to clean, keep clean, and sterilize and things like that. Again, for the food safety.
So, one of the things, again, working with a chef, I think, not only are we getting some cooking tips in there, culinary tips, I want to say, as the dietitian, a retail dietitian is talking about the nutrient content of some of the vegetables we're putting in. As we get to the beans here again, the beans are so affordable. We'll talk about the cost of this recipe, which amazed us both, but the fiber content and the nutrient that's in the beans, the dietitian can be talking about that, while the chef might be talking again about and showing a culinary tip or two, right?
Yeah. The other thing that I like to talk about when we're doing the beans is, there's always do you rinse them? Do you not? If I do, I make sure I rinse them before I get to the store and that everything is ready to go. You can talk about low sodium, but when you're pouring the liquor that the things come out, that's where most of the sodium is, and it's not in the bean itself.
40%, and I know the retail dietitians know that, but you remove at least 40% of the sodium when you rinse and drain the beans.
Yeah.
But we know, too, that the beans, the canned beans, are so easy, right? And very simple to open the can. I often talk about, too, people used to be a little bit worried about cans, but they're 100% recyclable, very safe, shelf stable for a long time.
Yes.
And as we use the beans, too, another good talking point here is to tell people, yes, the canned beans are available. Rinse them. They're available in low sodium varieties. I've also got a variety of dry beans here because, Michigan is a surprise to a lot of people, but is number 2 in production of dry beans in the country. A lot of the beans go into processing for, people like Bush Beans and private brands and Campbell's and such. On the MichiganBean.com website is a video that I did showing people how to cook dry beans in an Instant Pot. And I think you mentioned you do it too.
I love the Instant Pot for beans.
We do it in batches, right? We do it in batches and then we just freeze them, vacuum, seal them because it's even less expensive to buy them dried. And they're shelf stable for years.
Yes. And so for 1 pound of beans that are dry, you're going to get at least 2 pounds of end product. Right? So again, you're paying $1 for a bag of beans, and you're getting more than you would with a canned product. Yeah. The canned is convenience, right? It's
about the convenience, absolutely. But right now, and people will see it, that the beans are flying off the shelves. I know the sales have gone up since COVID, but because they're such an economical source of protein, they're so versatile, used in many different things.
Yes.
That people are they're stocking their shelves with them, but they're looking for new ideas. That's too why we kind of wanted to focus on the soup and chili today.
So as you will have seen, pretty much we've got the tomatoes, we've got our harder vegetables in, we're cooking that down, we're adding our spice layers, and we're doing layer upon layer. The beans are already cooked, so we don't need to add those in too early, as is in the chili, the squash and the turkey and the corn. So we want to spend a time here where we're talking about what's going on, allowing our fresh vegetables to cook down. Yeah. So the next one you want to add is the green chili.
Yep, I have a 4-ounce can of diced mild green chilies that are going in there.
And that's an area where you can add heat. So if you're making this for yourself or your family, or you can explain to the client that they can get the hot chili peppers, or they can add heat in that way, and they're not just doing it via a spice or something else. They're doing it naturally with a vegetable. Now, mine's cooking up really, really nice. Everything's kind of breaking down. Now comes time that we're going to add our beans. Okay. Right? So I've got 3 types of beans. I've got the cannelli beans. I've got pinto.
Red beans.
Oh, red beans.
Yep. Or you could use pinto. This is the beauty of this, right? You could use whatever beans you like to use here.
And then these are the Great Northerns, right? Mm-hmm. And so, again, people eat with their eyes, so we want to have color. I could just as easily add black beans to this. Again, we just want to get the beans in there. That's the main thing. Okay, so toss that around, get that all incorporated with our spice pack.
It really is looking beautiful. The colors are amazing in there. Yeah. And one of the things, am I supposed to add my beans now?
You add the beans, yeah.
I've got some red kidney beans. And in Michigan, they actually grow the white kidney beans, the cannellini beans. We have the dark red kidney beans and the light red kidney beans. And I've got a can of black beans as well that I'm adding to mine.
Yeah.
But one of the things we were talking about beforehand, and I want, before I forget to say it, is this conversation about blue zones has been coming up.
Yeah.
So as you're talking to people too and doing a demo with, especially with something like beans, and a lot of soups and stuff, is that in the blue zones, the areas where people live the longest, one of the top foods that they eat is beans, which I think is interesting. And I was able to do an interview with Dan Buettner, who discovered the blue zones, and it's on the Michigan bean.com website, and anybody can use the information that I gathered from him. But he shares a favorite recipe there and talks a lot about just the many different ways to eat beans.
And also in the blue zones, the folks will be eating some sort of rice or some other sort of grain that will further enhance the bean protein possibility. Yeah. So again, I often think of red beans and rice. That's been a peasant food and around for years and years and years, but they didn't know why it was so good for them. It was just that it was available to them. I wanted to just say on this part now, before we even put our vegetable stock in, this could be a wonderful bean stew.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
And again, just another way. And if you wanted to add a protein to this, chicken thighs or, skinless chicken breast or something, and put them in, cover it, put a little bit of stock in, and that's just a wonderful cassoulet.
Oh,
just a very great French dish. But again, peasant food, very simple, nutrient dense, all the good stuff, right? Where I'm going to add bay leaves. Now, here's the thing about bay leaves. We have fresh bay leaves, and you can pick those up in the produce section, in a pack, fruit and veg section. These are my preference to a dry bay leaf. There's nothing wrong with them. They'll both give the same aroma and flavor. More often than not, people are not sure how long they've had some of the dry bay leaves.
We all have some of those spices in our cupboard where we get the dates. And
correct. Like, so, the fresh bay leaves will work really, really great. In fact, I'm going to use both. Okay. Right? So we're going to do that. And on my dish here, Shari, how's that looking in there?
It's looking
beautiful.
It's bubbling.
Yeah. So I'm going to add my stock, or actually in this case, I think we have a vegetable broth.
Vegetable stock.
Yeah. Oh, vegetable stock. So the reason that I want to use a stock over a broth is because a stock is the root liquid. A broth uses stock plus salt plus water. So if you want the full flavor of the vegetable, this is where they put the skins and everything in and cook it all down, and they strain it, and that's where they're getting the major flavor.
I never knew quite what the difference was. See, I learned something else again.
Yeah. So again, I'm glad you're using vegetable stock because it's a great addition in flavor. And remember, we're trying to build layers. Yeah. And if you talk about building,
think about that. You're building layers. Yeah.
If you talk and you think about building layers, it's always flavor, because it's very hard to sell health. But if you can tell someone, you eat this because it tastes great, oh, and by the way, it's healthy, right? But if you said to them, eat this because it's healthy, they're going to go, no.
I've learned that over the years. I always say it's got to be, taste good, and then it's got to be somewhat easy, right? Affordable is huge right now, as we talked about. And oh, by the way, it's really healthy. That's always,
and it's actually pretty good for you, right?
It always to me is like the bonus. So, okay.
So we can add the turkey, the corn, and the squash. And we're going to show you a little bit about the squash here in a minute. But you can add those three ingredients.
Now, the turkey, I just happen to have some leftover turkey that was frozen that we utilized. But it could be ground turkey. It could be a plant-based meat alternative that you added to
the pea
this.
proteins that are very popular
It could
these
be
days.
ground beef. I mean, you could do whatever. And again, that's the versatility that could be leftover rotisserie chicken.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about doing these food demos. And people are all about the personalization right now. They want to personalize the menu to their family's needs. That can be happening. The corn too.
Corn too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got my corn in there.
So the last ingredient I'm going to add to the soup will give it a thickener. You could serve the soup just like this, and it would be fine. But this is going to add a little extra fiber and extra flavor. And this is pearl barley. And it's quick cook. This is about a half a cup. And we're just going to add that. You may have to add a little extra stock or water to the soup, because that will take over a little bit more than what we have. So we've got two other things that we just wanted to show kind of quickly here on little chef tips. The first one is, if you can't get the squash that's already frozen or pre-cut or whatever, or you have access to butternut squash, this is half a butternut squash. Again, the easiest way to handle these is to take the butternut squash, try to cut the top off it if you can, so that it doesn't roll around, or place it straight on its base like that, put the knife through the top and push down. Okay, once it's stable, again, just two hands straight down. Then it comes to peeling. Most people will try to peel from here, and it's too much.
I've done that. It's very difficult.
It's quite heavy. This is probably close to 2 pounds. And so trying to handle that, it's too much. So the easiest way is just to cut a slab. And I like the thicker necked squash like that, because this is all meat. This is all meat, and that's what we want to do. And once you've cut that, then you can just take your vegetable peeler and you can just peel like you do an apple.
Instead of the whole thing, just do the small pieces at a time. Then they're ready to cut right up.
And they're ready to cut straight away. Okay. So that's an easy way to do that. And then I'll leave the skin on that one. But then on this one, again, always work to a flat surface. Mm-hmm. And so take your knife on the flat, cut the thickness that you want, just like that. 2 hands if you have to, not a problem. And then line them back up and cut through. And now you have pieces, as we said earlier, that's important that you try to keep the pieces of the squash or the carrot or the onion or the potato about the same size so that they cook, right? Yeah. So that's a simple, easy thing to do on that.
This is the beauty, though, again, of working with the chef, is these little tips that some people are like, oh, I'm not going to buy a squash, and they're trying to save money. And of course, buying a fresh squash is going to save more money than getting a value-added one that's all cut up for you, and that's okay, too. But just by understanding how to do that in the proper way, I think gives people confidence in the kitchen.
Yes.
And knowing that a chef taught them, and it's nothing that anybody can do, right? Anybody can do that. And it goes into pre-prep too. So if squash is coming into season. I mean, this is again why we chose to do some soups and chilies today.
Yeah.
I know as retail dietitians, the promotional time period that you're coming up to, it's Family Meals Month, it's back to school, there's tailgating. These recipes are all perfect for that. Along with the fact that, as we mentioned, people are looking for affordable, healthy options for moving forward. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about was a red pepper. So it always intrigued me that the cost of a red pepper was always 2 to 3 times the cost of a green pepper. They grow the same. There's nothing. In fact, a red pepper was once green. So, I mean, just it boggles me. But I want to get every bit that I can use out of this red pepper. So a simple way to do it, leave the stem in and cut just so that you are past where the stem is. And now this part will just pull straight off, just like that. Okay? And if there's a little bit of seed there, we can always just pull that out. The second part is, if you look at the pepper here, you'll see a membrane here, a membrane here, and a membrane there. So you turn the pepper to the side, start from the back, and cut just like that. Like
You're
that.
getting nice usable pieces. The membrane's already gone.
Yeah.
This is one of those things you taught me that every time I do it, I'm kind of proud of myself, I must say.
Yeah.
And this is that confidence that every little tip and trick that we can teach consumers in the kitchen gives them more confidence to grocery shop and to prepare meals at home.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is some people will say, oh, I can't eat peppers because they make me burp or they give me gas. And more often than not, it's the membrane on the inside. So there's a way, but you need a really good sharp knife. And I'll try and do that here in just a bit. That's the seed sac and everything. It's all gone. Everything now.
I like this, how you pop that off the top. I mean, most of us would usually waste probably at least half of that.
So right there is probably close to 75 cents worth of pepper, right? But if you take a piece like this and you push it flat and you take your knife, if you're very gentle, you can take a top layer off the pepper.
Oh, yeah.
Just like that. And now you only have flesh. And that's the part that gives people problems.
I never knew that.
But again, you need that with a good sharp knife. We're going to cut, just chop. And again, another pepper item to use is the little red peppers or the colored peppers that you get in the packs. And you can just pop the tops off of those, and you can use like 100% of those.
Okay.
So yeah, it really goes easy.
This is just great. I love this.
Yeah.
One of the things while Paul's chopping up that pepper, my chili, by the way, looks amazing. It's reminding me of fall, and I don't want to quite think about that yet, but it's coming, right? One of the things I want to remind everybody of, we have so many resources at Michigan Bean, not plural, but michiganbean.com. I have put together a dietitian toolkit. There's all sorts of information about the types of beans grown in Michigan, how to use them, tips on eating more plant-forward meals, sustainability. I'm not going to get into that now, but beans have a really big sustainability story to tell, not only because the way they're grown, they're nitrogen fixers, they enhance the soil, but really it's great information there. So when you go to that website, you will find that under the health professionals section, along with some webinars that you can get free CPUs and educational credits there. We also have a consumer cooking guidebook there with recipes and hints for cooking dry beans, whether it be the old soak and cook method or overnight, or if it's the method we talked about in the Instant Pot. So lots of great information there, along with, I said, that interview from Dan Buettner in the Blue Zones, as well as more recipes.
So aren't you finding, Shari, that more and more that you go out and you're talking to people about, cooking with beans or different things, that a lot of the consumers are far more interested today about the health part of things and also, the cost. I mean, so you did a cost comparison on these.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing it up. We talked about affordability, and it's amazing, truly, because the affordability factor here, I think for my soup, the chili, which has the protein added to it, it was $1.83 per serving. Yeah. It's about 8 servings per recipe that we're doing, $1.83. You add in some whole grain bread from the bakery or something, some homemade muffins that you make, and this is a wonderful meal for less than $2. And your soup was $1.58.
$1.58. And if you cooked or prepared your own beans and not used canned beans, it would be even less.
Even less, right? Yeah, that's with using canned beans, which are still pretty inexpensive. Yeah.
So we've now got our red pepper cut up. I like to put it in towards the end of the process, and I like that because it gives a textural difference.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be cooked in mushy.
It doesn't have to be mushy or cooked bad or overcooked. It's very easy, Okay. Now this is just going to continue to cook, And the last thing that you would add, you may notice that we haven't added any salt or pepper. And what I always tell folks is that, before my glove got dirty, again, if I wanted to change to make sure, I just pop it straight off. And now I've got clean surfaces, right? Again, that's the beauty of wearing multiple gloves. And if we were handling turkey or we were handling, other products like that, chicken in particular. The last thing about salt and pepper, there are some parts where in a recipe you will add salt at the beginning, and that will help to draw liquid out. But for recipes like this, it's salt and pepper is always at the end to taste. Remember that we tried to use wherever we could low sodium. I can add salt, but I can't take it out. So before I start adding lots of salt in the cooking process, I want to see where it is at the end. And that's the main reason. And I love these little pepper grinders. Again, do a nice coarse pepper. On this soup, the recipe calls also that the possibility to use red pepper. So if you want a little bit of spice, a little bit of thing to pepper.
Sometimes with the bean soup, people do like a little bit of heat to them. So again, that's the beauty of personalizing these dishes to your taste. Yeah.
And if you use a regular bean, where you cook them up yourself, dry bean, they will tend to need a little bit more salt. But you do that at the end and not at the beginning, right? Yeah. Because if you put the salt in really early, it makes the beans a bit tough.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah? So last thing, we would have cooked this through. We would have tasted and added salt, or you leave it to the person to make their own, because some people may have salt issues that they can't have it in there. Yeah.
This is great. I'm really excited. We're like ready for dinner for many days here.
I think the thing to remember is I wanted to go back a little bit on something that you had said about learning from me as far as slicing and dicing. What I've found from working with Shari and I have been working together since 2003. And so we have developed a rapport, and it's kind of like dancing. We know which way we're going and what our thoughts are and where we go. And so that's a big plus for both of us, because it's when we're not guessing where the person is going to come from.
And that's from forming a relationship. And so, many of you may have a relationship with a chef that, you've met someone, you enjoyed working with them. If not, I think, Chef Paul, maybe you can tell them there's personal chef organizations.
Yeah. So the American Personal Chef Association has a website. You can go online to hireachef.com. And, the other really great place is if you have a local culinary school. Here in Michigan, we have several.
Yes.
And, the young graduates or the young students are really great to work with, and they like the idea of working with someone. For me personally, I've been in this business for 25 years, and every time I cook with Shari, I learn one more thing about either the business that we are in from a health perspective. I also learn great tips that I can pass on to my classes or to my guests or to my clients about one other item of health and nutrition. So it's a two-way street, and it works really, really well. These will continue to just cook down. It's just a wonderful, wonderful dish. This could be a stew. This could be a soup. Yours, again, we can add whatever we need. Yeah,
it's beautiful, and it's hearty, and it's colorful, and I can't wait to try it. Chef Paul, this has been really great, and I hope we've gotten across to people that, partnering with a chef to do a demo, to do a social media video, to do a media spot on TV. You really do. You're using the best of both your expertises. I mean, a lot of the dietitians in retail I know are great in the kitchen. I call ourselves good home cooks typically, but there are those culinary tips and tricks that we just haven't learned yet. And that's what I think, you have just shown throughout the years. And it's helping people be more confident in the kitchen, making sure they're choosing those quality ingredients, the ones that are giving them health. They feel good about cooking at home. They're excited about it. Again, it's choosing the right chef to make sure that they do understand consumer-friendly cooking.
Yes.
And they're making it very realistic. But from introducing new foods that come out in the store to how to use those ingredients and in new recipes, I just think there's a lot of great things that could happen. Even developing a series with a chef that people tune into, kind of cooking classes.
Yeah, in the Detroit area where I'm from, I have a working relationship with a dietitian at a hospital, and they have a demonstration kitchen, and we do healthy cooking for a lot of people after heart surgery.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
And so we will do that sort of thing. The one other point about a chef to look at is if you look on a TV cooking show, you will see chefs that are comfortable in doing prep, putting it together, and then end product, and doing that in a very short period of time. Or you'll get the ones that will still be cutting the onions and the thing, and the peppers and carrots and whatever. So again, be cognizant of the fact that they may be a very, very, very good chef. It's just not doing demonstrations in public that are what they how they
it might not be their comfort zone, and that's why too I think choosing carefully. You mentioned working with culinary schools, which I had done quite a bit of, and we would get several students who might come in and help us with in-store demos at the time, and maybe 2 or 3 of them were very comfortable with educating and talking to consumers, and some of them weren't.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, just like a dietitian would be, just finding the right personality to complement what you're doing. So Chef Paul, this has been great. We've got the finished dishes here. I think we can show that. The pictures of that, the chili again looks just amazing. It's very polished looking. We've got winter squash in there. You could actually put it in a can of pumpkin if you wanted to. You could put in sweet potato. There's lots of different things. We've got the soup here as well. You can garnish that with some, fresh herbs. And again, just some bread. You've got so many veggies in there, just some nice bread from your bakery, and you've got a complete meal. So this has been a whole lot of fun, Chef Paul. I do want to put up our contact information. Chef Paul and I have our personal emails there. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to talk to Paul about maybe finding a chef in your area. If you have any questions of me about Michigan beans and the work that I do with them, we'd be happy to chat with you. I also have the MichiganBean.com website up there. I told you about many of the resources that are up there. There is a lot of them, and we are still adding to those resources. So if you don't find something you want, let us know, and I can direct you into the right place. So again, it was our pleasure to be here with you, and I'm going to turn it back to Annette now for our Q&A.
Yeah, Shari and Paul, thanks so much. This was really great. And I just love the chemistry you guys and the comfortability you two have with each other, which I think kind of goes to your point of saying that find a chef you've worked with, or if it's someone you've worked with in the past, that they are likely, because you have that rapport, are a great person to do an event like this with, right? So
Yes,
if anybody has any questions, please just post them in the chat. Shari and Paul, one question I have is just, do you have thoughts or comments on, in a virtual environment, like obviously for this demo, you were both in the same kitchen cooking together, but have you ever done something where one of you is in one location, the other one in a different location, or any comments on that?
Yeah, I've done many a Zoom since COVID. That's a lot of the way the demos have gone, and the cook-alongs, go great. You have to pick your recipe that you're gonna know people can do fairly easily. Anything that has intricate bits and pieces that doesn't work because someone gets held up. But yeah, we've done it numerous times, yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing a demo together, obviously, to me, it's easier if you're in the same location because you can see very clearly what the other person is doing. So if you do have to be in a separate location, I think it just has to be very organized and step by step, and as all of us would do anyways, just keep it together. But it is much easier together.
The other one comment on that is it doesn't matter really if it's apart or together. You need to rehearse it.
Mhm.
It's a script, right?
Mhm.
So you need to make sure that your time is good, that you follow the steps that or the punch points that you want to make sure that you're going to get, and that you don't forget and get right at the end of it and say, oh, I've got all this information I've got to give you because I forgot to give it halfway through the point. So
Yeah.
I think that brings up a good point, Paul, because again, you don't want it so scripted that it seems artificial. But and I know a lot of the dietitians understand this because they do media and videos and all that. And Paul and I, what we did is we just kind of put, okay, 10 minutes, we're going to do an intro, 30 minutes is going to be the cooking. We listed some key talking points for each of us under that, questions to ask, making sure we got out the cost of the recipes and that sort of thing. But really, it is. And we practice, right, Paul? He came to my house early. We went through it a couple of times, just kind of casually till we felt comfortable with the, rapport we were having and the timing. So that does help.
So we have a question from a participant who is wondering if you guys use cue cards or a script, or if you're just kind of ad-libbing as you go.
So I can remember a time back when Shari and I first started where we would have almost a script, almost like a song list that a band would have. And we would follow that because the audience couldn't see it. But again, working with one another and doing a quick rehearsal, we've become adept at doing that sort of thing. You almost can pick I can pick what Shari's going to say about something about nutrition or something about cost and that sort of thing, because we've worked together. But I can remember the days when we first started. We would have a list of things we wanted to make sure we touched, and that we kept one another straight and working it through.
This was more of what I call a very loose script that we have now. Again, we blocked off the times, introduction, the cooking part of it, and then probably, and I'm looking at it right now, which is why I'm looking down, probably about 3 to 4 main talking points within there. And just knowing that we would, again, play off each other, because we know we wanted Paul to show the glove trick, which people love that, Paul. Wearing the extra gloves for food safety and the way you cut a pepper, the things that kind of were aha moments for me. And I go back to that. What are those tidbits that a chef can pull out, just like a dietitian pulls out nutrition highlights or tidbits? What can a chef pull out? What are people complaining about? They don't buy mangoes because they don't know how to cut them. I've heard people say that, or, oh, butternut squashes. And have you ever tried to cut one of those butternut squash? By just helping them see how easy it can be and giving them a little tip. Again, it often just drives them to more sales, which is what we're all trying to do.
So one of the things that you always see on the cooking shows on HGTV or whatever channel, the Food Network, is they always taste the product. Now, you guys did not taste product, but I imagine we have some dietitian attendees today who maybe have had a slip up of tasting a product during a live demo where it maybe didn't go quite great. But any feedback or thoughts on that? Of, do you generally taste just to, like Food Network would say you should, right?
Yes, you should taste as you're going along and whatever. And you need to, on my chef jacket, I have a pocket for disposable spoons. And I will whip out a spoon, do it, and I will always say in front of the audience, there's no double dipping in Chef Paul's kitchen. So you throw that spoon away and you take another one out. Just a real quick story on that one. I saw I was at Fox 2 in Detroit doing a demo, and a guy was making smoothies, and one of the things he did was he licked his finger, which is a absolute no. Once you got the gloves on, you don't really do any of this or whatever. Licked his finger, and he was supposed to get the ooh and the ah, where everyone was supposed to taste it, and the host wouldn't even touch it. They just had
Mhm.
a little bit too much licking going on there, and they stopped. So again, tasting, but you have to make sure that you're doing it safely and that you're throwing away the spoons or pulling off the glove or doing that sort of thing.
You know, the other thing in it too is I think, and I've had this experience in media on live TV, where two things. I've made sure I've checked with the host first, because I've had some hosts say, I don't taste anything on TV. I don't want anything stuck in my teeth. I don't want anything on my face. And there's other hosts that say, oh, please offer me a sample so I can taste it on TV. So knowing those expectations going in. I've also had the experience, not myself, but someone I used to work with who was making jalapeno poppers, popped one in his mouth on live TV and actually got blisters in his mouth, did not de-seed it properly, and had to run off the air to grab the weather person's Diet Coke that was sitting on the counter. So I mean, you know, you just be prepared for tasting is probably the best thing.
One other real quick, and again, it goes back to safety. Shari and I were at a store doing a store opening, and we had made a plate that looked beautiful, right? But it wasn't cooked. It was using the technique with a blowtorch to make it look like it was cooked and everything. And Shari and I turned our backs for 2 minutes. Either went to a bathroom or went to get a coffee, and we came back and some guy was eating the raw product. So again, just be very careful with what you've got going around, and you don't leave food unattended, because that can be an issue.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's an interesting one too, because oftentimes you're using some kind of food techniques to make it look pretty for photography or for the camera, and it isn't necessarily cooked. So that's a great point, Paul, for sure. So Shari and Paul, I mean, thank you so much for this demo. For our attendees, the certificate of attendance will be sent out. This presentation has been approved for 1 continuing education credit. I will also send along with that the recipes and the shopping list if you haven't already received it. But this has been a great presentation, great thought starter going into fall especially. So we really appreciate Michigan Beans sponsoring and supporting this cook along today. Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Namaste.